On the night of April 14, 1912, as the Titanic's hull cracked and groaned under the weight of rushing water, wireless operator Jack Phillips frantically tapped out distress signals into the frigid North Atlantic air. At 10:35 p.m. New York time, he transmitted the ship's precise coordinates: 41 degrees 46 minutes north, 49 degrees 57 minutes west. These numbers, crackling through the darkness via Morse code, would become both a lifeline and a mystery. The nearby Carpathia received the signal and raced through ice-filled waters to reach the exact location. What seemed like navigational precision would later prove to be the beginning of one of history's greatest underwater treasure hunts. Captain Arthur Rostron of the RMS Carpathia pushed his ship beyond its limits, arriving at the distress coordinates just as dawn broke over the Atlantic. The sight that greeted him was both miraculous and heartbreaking. 20 lifeboats scattered across the calm sea, carrying 705 survivors from what was once the world's most magnificent ship. The ease with which Carpathia located these survivors created an illusion of certainty. After all, if finding floating lifeboats was this straightforward, how difficult could it be to locate an 882-foot-long steel ship lying on the ocean floor? This assumption would haunt explorers for the next 7 decades, as the coordinates that saved lives became the starting point for countless failed expeditions. 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, the Titanic rested in a world of perpetual darkness and crushing pressure. In 1912, this depth was as unreachable as the surface of Mars. The technology simply didn't exist to venture that deep into the abyss. The deepest diving bells of the era could barely reach 200 feet, while the Titanic lay at 12,500 feet, a crushing depth where pressure exceeds 370 times that at sea level. Even if someone could theoretically reach the wreck, the technological challenges were staggering. No lights existed that could penetrate such darkness, no cameras could withstand such pressure, and no human could survive the journey. The Titanic wasn't just lost, it was entombed in an alien world. In the immediate aftermath of the disaster, grief and desperation spawned increasingly bizarre recovery schemes. Entrepreneurs proposed everything from giant magnets to raise the steel hull to filling the ship with ping-pong balls to provide buoyancy. One particularly macabre suggestion involved using dynamite to blast bodies loose from the wreck, allowing them to float to the surface for burial. These schemes, while absurd, reflected the deep human need to reclaim what was lost. The Titanic had become more than a shipwreck, it was a symbol of human ambition gone wrong, and the desire to bring it back to the surface represented a form of collective redemption. But the laws of physics and the brutal reality of deep ocean exploration would not be swayed by emotion or wishful thinking. World War II became an unlikely catalyst for deep-sea exploration. The demands of naval warfare drove rapid advances in sonar technology, submarine design, and underwater navigation systems. Military engineers developed sophisticated echolocation devices to track enemy submarines, while deep-diving vessels were created for rescue and reconnaissance missions. By the 1950s, these wartime innovations had evolved into tools that could theoretically reach the Titanic's depth. Echo-sounding devices could map the ocean floor with unprecedented accuracy, while new submersibles promised to carry humans into the deepest trenches. For the first time since 1912, finding the Titanic seemed not just possible but inevitable. The race was about to begin. In 1953, salvage expert Risson Beasley made the first serious scientific attempt to locate the Titanic wreck. His approach was revolutionary for its time. Using controlled dynamite explosions to create sound waves that would bounce off the ocean floor and reveal its topography through sonar echoes. Beasley's team positioned their vessel directly over the Titanic's last known coordinates, the same numbers that had guided Carpathia to the survivors 41 years earlier. They methodically detonated charges in a grid pattern, listening for the distinctive echo signature that would indicate a large metallic object. The theory was sound, but the execution revealed the crushing reality of deep-sea exploration. The ocean, vast and unforgiving, swallowed their sound waves, returning only whispers from an empty seabed. Beasley's failure illuminated a crucial oversight that would plague searchers for decades. The Titanic's distress coordinates marked where the ship was when Phillips sent his final wireless message, not where it actually sank. For over 2 hours after that transmission, the massive liner continued its death spiral, drifting with current and wind as it took on water. During those critical hours, the ship could have moved several miles from its reported position. The survivors, found relatively easily by Carpathia, had drifted even further in their lifeboats during the cold April night. This meant that the precise coordinates everyone trusted were actually just the beginning of a vast search area that could span dozens of square miles of abyssal ocean floor. The North Atlantic's seabed proved to be a graveyard of false hopes. Beasley's sonar detected numerous promising targets, large metallic objects that could theoretically be the Titanic. Each detection sparked excitement and careful investigation only to reveal yet another disappointment. Scattered across the ocean floor were the remnants of decades of maritime disasters, cargo ships sunk by German U-boats during 2 world wars, fishing vessels claimed by storms, and countless smaller craft that had met their fate in these treacherous waters. The technology of the 1950s couldn't distinguish between these various wrecks, creating a needle-in-a-haystack scenario where every haystack might contain multiple needles. The Titanic had become one ghost among many in the deep Atlantic cemetery. By the 1970s, marine geologist Robert Ballard had already established himself as a pioneer in deep-sea exploration. Working at the prestigious Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, he had access to cutting-edge technology that made Beasley's crude dynamite methods seem primitive. Ballard envisioned a systematic approach to finding the Titanic using sophisticated sonar arrays and underwater cameras mounted on remotely operated vehicles. His passion for the project went beyond scientific curiosity. He saw the Titanic as the ultimate test of deep-sea archaeology. A chance to prove that even the deepest secrets of the ocean could be unlocked with the right combination of technology and determination. The Woods Hole board approved his ambitious plan, and in 1977 Ballard set out to make history. Ballard's first Titanic expedition began with tremendous optimism but quickly descended into catastrophe. His team had rigged an impressive array of sonar equipment and cameras to a massive drill pipe, creating a technological marvel that could theoretically reach the ocean floor while maintaining communication with the surface vessel. The system represented months of careful engineering and the investment of significant institutional resources. But the deep Atlantic had no respect for human ambition or technological prowess. Without warning, the drill pipe snapped under the enormous pressure and stress of the deep-sea environment. In seconds, hundreds of thousands of dollars of irreplaceable equipment tumbled into the abyss, lost forever in the same darkness that concealed the Titanic itself. The loss of his equipment was more than a financial setback for Ballard. It was a personal devastation that would haunt him for years. The young marine geologist returned to Woods Hole empty-handed, facing skeptical colleagues and disappointed administrators who questioned whether the Titanic was worth such risks and resources. The failure forced Ballard to confront the brutal reality that good intentions and advanced technology weren't enough to conquer the deep ocean. The Titanic seemed to actively resist discovery, claiming the very tools designed to find it. But rather than abandoning his dream, Ballard began planning his return, determined to learn from this costly lesson and develop even more sophisticated approaches to deep-sea exploration. While Ballard nursed his wounds and planned his comeback, an unlikely figure emerged to dominate the Titanic search: Jack Grimm, a flamboyant Texas oil millionaire with a passion for the impossible. Grimm had already made headlines funding expeditions to find Noah's Ark, the Loch Ness Monster, and evidence of a hollow Earth. His critics dismissed him as an eccentric showman, but Grimm possessed 2 crucial assets that serious scientists lacked: unlimited funding and an unshakable belief that anything could be found if you looked hard enough. The Titanic represented his greatest challenge yet, a real target with documented coordinates, unlike the mythical creatures that had previously captured his imagination. Grimm was ready to spend whatever it took to succeed where others had failed. Grimm's enthusiasm for the Titanic search led him to recruit 2 of the world's leading marine scientists: Dr. William Ryan of Columbia University and Dr. Fred Spiess of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. On paper, the partnership seemed perfect: Grimm's unlimited budget combined with world-class scientific expertise. The researchers brought decades of experience in deep-sea exploration and access to sophisticated sonar systems that far exceeded anything Ballard had attempted. Dr. Ryan had pioneered techniques for mapping ocean basins, while Dr. Spiess had developed revolutionary underwater navigation systems. Together, they represented the best hope yet for solving the Titanic mystery. But they soon discovered that working with Jack Grimm came with unexpected challenges that would test their scientific integrity. The partnership between Grimm and his scientific advisors nearly collapsed before it began when the eccentric millionaire announced his intention to bring a map-reading monkey, named Titan on the expedition. Grimm, who had previously employed a monkey to help search for Noah's Ark, genuinely believed that animals possessed intuitive abilities that could supplement human technology. The proposal horrified Dr. Ryan and Dr. Speece, who saw it as a publicity stunt that would undermine the expedition's scientific credibility. They threatened to withdraw from the project entirely, forcing Grimm to choose between his primate consultant and his scientific team. Reluctantly, Grimm agreed to leave Titan on shore, but the incident highlighted the fundamental tension between serious exploration and sensationalized adventure that would characterize the entire search. In August 1980, Grimm's first official Titanic expedition departed from Halifax, Nova Scotia, with the research vessel HJW. They loaded with state-of-the-art side-scan sonar equipment. The team's confidence was high as they approached the coordinates where Phillips had transmitted his final distress call 68 years earlier. Unlike previous searchers who had relied on crude echo-sounding techniques, Grimm's team possessed sonar systems that could create detailed images of the ocean floor, revealing objects as small as automobiles from thousands of feet above. The technology represented a quantum leap forward in underwater detection capability. As they began their systematic search pattern, everyone aboard believed they were on the verge of making history. Day after day, Grimm's sophisticated sonar painted detailed pictures of the Atlantic seabed, revealing a surprisingly barren underwater landscape. The team methodically covered the area around the distress coordinates in an expanding grid pattern, but found nothing resembling the massive bulk of the Titanic. The sonar images showed occasional rock formations and small debris fields, but nothing that matched the signature of an 882-foot luxury liner. The disappointment was crushing. After all the preparation, expense, and technological advancement, the ocean floor appeared as empty as it had been for every previous searcher. The realization began to dawn that perhaps the fundamental assumption underlying all their efforts was flawed. Maybe the Titanic wasn't where everyone thought it should be. The failure to find the Titanic at its reported coordinates forced Grimm's team to confront an uncomfortable possibility. The ship's officers had transmitted incorrect position information during the disaster. This wasn't necessarily due to incompetence or panic, but rather to the complex realities of maritime navigation in 1912. Ships routinely changed their clocks to accommodate different time zones during Atlantic crossings, and the Titanic's crew may have failed to account for this when calculating their position. Additionally, the ship's chronometers could have been affected by the massive collision with the iceberg, throwing off crucial timing calculations. If the navigation error was significant enough, the Titanic could be miles away from where everyone had been looking for 7 decades. Armed with the theory that the Titanic's coordinates were wrong, Grimm made a bold decision to expand the search area dramatically. Instead of focusing on a few square miles around the distress coordinates, his team would systematically scan a massive 1,500-meter grid that covered dozens of square miles of ocean floor. This expansion multiplied the complexity and cost of the operation exponentially, but Grimm's oil fortune could sustain the effort. The new search strategy represented a fundamental shift in Titanic hunting, from precision targeting based on historical records to comprehensive area coverage that acknowledged the uncertainty of the ship's final position. It was a gamble that would either vindicate decades of failed searches or prove that the Titanic was findable. After all. As Grimm's expanded search progressed, the sonar operators began marking unusual readings on their charts, anomalies that stood out from the relatively flat ocean floor. By the end of the expedition, they had identified 14 distinct points of interest that warranted further investigation. Each target represented a potential breakthrough, a possible piece of the Titanic puzzle that had eluded searchers for so long. The targets varied in size and shape. Some appeared to be large metallic objects, others showed the scattered patterns typical of debris fields. The team carefully recorded the coordinates of each anomaly, knowing that future expeditions would need to investigate these promising leads. For the first time, searchers had a list of specific targets rather than just empty ocean. Despite their technological advantages, Grimm's expedition faced the same challenges that had plagued earlier searchers. Their magnetometer, designed to detect large metallic objects through magnetic field variations, malfunctioned early in the search, eliminating a crucial detection method. North Atlantic weather proved as treacherous as ever, with storms and high seas limiting the time available for systematic searching. Equipment that worked perfectly in laboratory conditions struggled with the corrosive salt environment and constant motion of the ship. Each day brought new technical challenges that consumed precious time and resources. The expedition members began to appreciate why the Titanic had remained hidden for so long. The ocean actively resisted human intrusion with equipment failures, weather delays, and navigation difficulties. Frustrated but not defeated, Jack Grimm funded a second expedition in 1981, this time equipped with even more sophisticated sonar systems and better weather contingency plans. The year of preparation had allowed his team to analyze the previous season's data more thoroughly and develop improved search strategies. They returned to the most promising of the 14 anomalies identified during their first expedition, determined to solve the mystery once and for all. The new sonar equipment could generate higher resolution images and penetrate deeper into sediment layers that might have partially buried wreckage over the decades. Grimm's persistence and financial commitment had created the most comprehensive Titanic search effort in history. On the final day of Grimm's 1981 expedition, as the team prepared to return to port with another disappointing result, a sonar operator noticed something unusual in the latest images. Deep in the footage from their most recent pass, partially obscured by sediment and ocean floor debris, was a shape that looked remarkably like a ship's propeller. The distinctive curved blades and central hub were clearly visible in the grainy sonar image. Excitement spread through the ship as team members gathered to examine the mysterious object. Could this be a piece of the Titanic's massive propulsion system? The timing was cruel. They had discovered their most promising lead just as the expedition was ending, with no time or resources left to investigate further. The propeller-like object captured on Grimm's final sonar pass became the subject of intense debate in the maritime archaeology community. Supporters argued that the shape, size, and location were consistent with a piece of the Titanic's stern section, which housed the ship's massive propellers. Skeptics countered that the sonar resolution wasn't sufficient to definitively identify the object and that the ocean floor was littered with metallic debris from decades of shipping disasters. The controversy highlighted the fundamental limitation of sonar technology. It could detect objects but couldn't provide the detailed visual confirmation needed for positive identification. Without actual photographs or physical evidence, the propeller remained a tantalizing mystery that added to the Titanic legend rather than solving it. While Jack Grimm captured headlines with his highly publicized Titanic searches, Robert Ballard was quietly pursuing a different strategy. Still haunted by his 1977 failure, Ballard had struck a classified deal with the U.S. Navy that would provide him with the funding and technology needed for another attempt. The Navy wanted detailed surveys of two nuclear submarines, USS Thresher and USS Scorpion, that had been lost in the Atlantic during the 1960s. In exchange for completing these sensitive military missions, they would allow Ballard to use their advanced deep submersible technology to search for the Titanic. It was a perfect arrangement. The Navy got crucial intelligence about their lost vessels, while Ballard gained access to equipment far more sophisticated than anything available to civilian researchers. Ballard's surveys of the lost nuclear submarines provided unexpected insights that would prove crucial to finding the Titanic. When Thresher and Scorpion imploded under crushing deep-sea pressure, they didn't simply sink intact to the ocean floor. Instead, the catastrophic implosions scattered debris across vast areas, creating distinctive comet tail patterns that stretched for hundreds of yards. Ballard realized that lighter materials, furniture, personal effects, pieces of superstructure, would drift much farther than the heavy hull sections, following underwater currents to create debris trails that pointed back toward the main wreckage. This understanding revolutionized his approach to the Titanic search, suggesting that finding scattered debris might be easier than locating the main hull sections, and that such debris could serve as a roadmap to the primary wreck site. In 1985, with only 12 days allocated for Titanic searching after completing his Navy missions, Ballard formed a partnership with French researchers led by Jean-Louis Michel. The French team brought their own sophisticated sonar technology and years of deep-sea exploration experience. Together, they developed a two-phase search strategy. The French would use their advanced sonar systems to quickly scan large areas of ocean floor, identifying promising targets, while Ballard's American team would follow up with detailed camera surveys using their remotely operated vehicle, Argo. This division of labor maximized their limited time by combining the speed of sonar searching with the precision of visual confirmation. The international partnership represented the most comprehensive and technologically advanced Titanic search ever attempted. The joint French-American expedition began with the same systematic approach that had characterized previous searches, but their advanced technology allowed them to cover ground much more quickly than earlier expeditions. Day after day, their sonar sweeps revealed the now familiar empty expanses of Atlantic seabed. The team began to experience the same crushing disappointment that had plagued Grimm, Beasley, and countless other searchers. Time was running out and their narrow window for Titanic searching was closing rapidly. The ocean seemed determined to keep its most famous secret, swallowing their sound waves and returning only echoes of failure. Some team members began to wonder if the ship had somehow been completely buried by decades of sediment accumulation, making detection impossible with current technology. On September 1, 1985, as Ballard's team guided their camera-equipped robot Argo through the black depths of the North Atlantic, their monitors suddenly filled with images that made hearts race throughout the control room. There, illuminated by Argo's powerful lights against the eternal darkness of the deep sea, was unmistakably man-made debris scattered across the ocean floor. A massive ship's boiler, one of the Titanic's 29 coal-burning furnaces, sat upright in the sediment like a monument to the disaster. The distinctive shape and size matched historical records perfectly, providing the first definitive proof that they had found their target. After 73 years of mystery, the Titanic had finally revealed itself to human eyes once again. Following the debris trail that Ballard's submarine research had taught him to recognize, Argo's cameras revealed the full scope of the Titanic's destruction. The great ship had not sunk intact as many had assumed, but had broken apart during its descent, scattering pieces across a debris field that stretched for hundreds of yards. The bow section, remarkably well preserved despite its violent impact with the ocean floor, sat upright in the sediment like a ghostly monument. Nearly 800 yards away, the stern section lay collapsed and heavily damaged, testament to the catastrophic forces that had torn the ship apart. Between them, scattered like artifacts from a museum, lay thousands of personal items, pieces of the ship's structure, and remnants of the luxury that had once defined the floating palace. The discovery of the Titanic in 1985 marked the end of one era of exploration and the beginning of another. Within years of Ballard's triumph, new expeditions were planning not just to visit the wreck, but to raise pieces of it to the surface. In 1996, a high-profile attempt to recover a section of the ship's hull captured worldwide attention, only to end in disaster when Hurricane Edward struck the operation. The storm served as a reminder that the North Atlantic had not finished with the Titanic story. It would continue to guard its prize jealously, allowing visitors but resisting those who sought to disturb the final resting place of the ship and the 1,500 souls who went down with her. The Titanic had been found, but the ocean would decide what secrets it was willing to surrender.